Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Social Flight Live. This is our EAA Spirit of Aviation Week special brought to you by Avidyne. We have a great guest right here with us today, and that is 310 pilot. If you've watched any of this on YouTube, unless you're hiding under a rock, you should know who Kevin Thornton is, as well as his wife Jamie and their family as they fly all around the country. And I'm going to bring him on right now to join us, and we'll learn all about his travels. Hi, how are you doing, Kevin?
Hey, Jeff. Good.
So, listen, you've got such great things and such a passionate following going on YouTube. Tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into aviation. What drew you to this world?
Shoot. I guess really it starts. So I'm a third generation pilot. My grandfather was in the infantry in World War II, did his time in Europe, came back after the war ended, and then became a civilian pilot. And later on, he was flying my dad around. My dad got into aviation, was in the Army, and was a helicopter pilot. But before he joined the Army, he had a Skyhawk and flew civilly, and then he became an Army pilot. And two of my uncles were both pilots. One flew F-15s, the first Gulf War, and the other one was an Army fixed-wing pilot who ended up being the chief pilot for Coca-Cola for a while. So I had a lot of aviation in the family, which is the case a lot of times with pilots. And then I went to the school at University of Georgia, started taking my first flight lesson my freshman year of college, and was just hooked. I was so enthralled by all things aviation. So I ended up, after that first year at the University of Georgia, my dad had a Skyhawk at the time. He was working for Delta, so he had his plane in Peachtree City, just on the south side of Atlanta. After I soloed in the Skyhawk, he then allowed me to use his plane to finish up my rating, pay for gas, instructor. So I moved back. I transferred to West Georgia, moved back down south of Atlanta with them, used his plane to finish up. And then by 19 years old, I was getting paid to fly. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And I was a flight instructor, MEI, did that in Peachtree City, Georgia for a while at Peachtree Flight Center. And was working towards the airline. Back then, you needed the magic 1202. This was pre 9/11. And got on flying aerial mapping for a company that did mapping with a Turbo Lance and a Cessna 401, which is how I fell in love with twin Cessnas and the tip tanks. And then 9/11 happened. Had all my times, had an interview scheduled with a Delta Connection commuter, and then 9/11 happened. Kind of was a dark time for airline drivers there for a while. I'd always been kind of intrigued by air traffic control, and the other thing about Peachtree City is Atlanta Tracon is in that town. So there were a couple of controllers at Atlanta Approach Control that had planes that I had talked to. So I ended up joining the Air Force and became an air traffic controller in the Air Force. I was stationed in Eglin, Florida, and they had an aero club there. So I was able to continue flight instructing while I was doing air traffic control. And that kind of how I got into flying and air traffic.
That's fascinating. You know, I have to say, Georgia has some of the most vibrant general aviation in the country. It's really amazing, especially in that area that you're talking about, of Peachtree City and around there.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing. It's really fascinating. A close friend of mine and someone at Social Flight, Paul Morrell, actually lives on an air park right down there at Mallard's Landing. And
Yep. I've flown in there before.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Yeah.
It's just so wonderful to see a state take and embrace general aviation to that degree. And so that's where you kind of got that start, both from the flying aspect of it, being all around, and then air traffic control. Tell me, with such a background on manipulating controls and being in the air, what was it like transitioning and learning about actually doing flight control?
Honestly, I think it's easier when being an air traffic controller or a pilot. I think having the other side in either direction would help you as a controller or as a pilot. I just remember being an instrument rated pilot before I wanted to do air traffic. I had a couple of aircraft issues, some emergencies, and it always like that approach controller who vectored you to the nearest airport, and I didn't have the approach plate with me because they were in the back when you had to have paper and you couldn't carry them all. So, and he just read me all this stuff and got me down. I was like, man, that is really amazing. And it kind of, that really started my intrigue with air traffic. But you're so far ahead of the game knowing what a pilot, how you talk. We have our own particular version of the English language that we use. So you're ahead of the game there. You understand aircraft characteristics. You understand instrument approaches. And so it definitely puts you very far ahead of the power curve by already being a pilot. And, you understand characteristics and everything a lot better.
It's always fascinating to me. As a pilot, we understand, air traffic controllers are human beings and that are on the other side of the radio. And they all have different personalities, different capabilities, different tendencies, being able to, handle more and allow more versus being a little more restrictive. And it always makes me wonder sometimes, am I talking to someone that's also a pilot, especially when they really get it and they're really helpful along the way? It makes me wonder if there's someone that really has that background.
And there are quite a few pilots in the air traffic control world, and even ones that aren't still current or active. A lot of them have had pilot's licenses at some point. And if you don't do the military route, the other path, which is what Jamie did, was what's called a CTI school. And I don't remember what that stands for, but at any rate, there's maybe 15 schools around the country that you could go to learn air traffic control. And a lot of those schools, not all of them, either offer or require a pilot's license in conjunction with that. So, it never hurts. You could be talking to an amazing controller and they just took the time to understand, and they've been on some fam flights or they've been in aviation, and maybe they're not a pilot, but they can at least understand what you're going through and know how to help you. And, or sometimes you're just talking to a pilot who maybe has been there before.
Now, so I understand Jamie's also an air traffic controller, and both of you met working what is probably the most busy airspace. Hey, how are you, Jamie?
She made it on.
Thank you for the cameo. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I have to say something as we are transition into the air traffic control talk. As an experienced pilot, watching your videos, obviously the radio management and the communication aptitude that you've got on the radios is absolutely spectacular. So nice job.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that prior to 9/11, it was quite common for controllers to ride jump seat and ride in the cockpit and do all that. And then after that, they kind of put the kibosh on that. And then, but it's still, it still can be a part of a controller's training to do a fan flight and ride in the cockpit. And I think it would be super beneficial. It's not really practical for us to do it anymore because it takes a lot. There's a lot of paperwork involved and time off and stuff like that. But I personally think that it should be a requirement.
Yeah, it is, like I've said, that it's so helpful. You find that there's times where you feel as a pilot, especially single pilot, hard IFR situations like that. There's been times, like I said earlier, we all understand air traffic controllers are human beings, and there are times when they are absolutely save your butt and know exactly how to help you out and how to take workload off. And there's other times where sometimes it seems like they don't quite understand what you're dealing with airborne, and I've always wondered, sometimes it means that maybe they're a pilot, that's on the ground, the ones that really are there for you.
It's funny because I feel like there are some controllers who have absolutely no idea what pilots do, and there are some pilots who have absolutely no idea what controllers do. And it's funny because we're so intertwined in this industry, but some of us are so clueless about the other side of it.
Yeah, it's too bad about, we keep going back to 9/11 as the turning point for that. And I do remember prior to 9/11, it was so common to go up in a tower, to go to an ATC facility. Actually, I remember going to Boston Center and spending time with them while they were working flights, going into towers and going to flight service when that was still public.
It's not now, it's not common now. We'll tell pilots, you guys, you can come for a tour, right? And they're like, what? I can come for a tour? It's of course you can. But people just don't, I don't know. We don't know. We don't think about it, I guess.
Yeah, they shut it down for a while after 9/11, and obviously it's shut down for COVID now. But eventually all you need is a pilot's license, and you should be able to get back into centers, TRACONs, and towers again.
Well, if that's something that you can do, then that's going to be the next thing that I probably do, and I'll probably do it. We have a new pilot in our SocialFlight family just as of last week. My son Jake just got his certificate. We've got another one, Ben, in training. So I want to get them into a center or a tower and get them to see what the other side is. So they have some very good understanding of what all of you have to deal with.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So tell me, what was it like for both of you working at Chicago O'Hare?
Well, for me, I grew up in Georgia, and the biggest is more of a culture weather shock for me. At the time when I got hired in the FAA, you had like a dream list of places you wanted to go. So when I got out of the military, I put all these Southeast places, and Chicago O'Hare was the busiest airport in the world at the time. So I filled up my 4 with places I wanted to live in the Southeast, and then the 5th was, well, it's a challenge. Let's see if we can go up to O'Hare. So they selected me for O'Hare, and that's
of course, last one on your list.
But it's been 15 years, 5 years at the tower, 10 years at the TRACON for me. At the tower, my high point was getting to work Oshkosh for 3 years, because you have to be a tower controller to work the air show. So I got to do that, and then got to come to the TRACON, and I'd always kind of wanted to do approach control ever since I was a new IFR pilot. So it's definitely a shock. You get used to it over time, and it's probably not good for your health, but you just get used to all the airplanes and all the weather and the stress, and eventually you just don't really feel like it's that stressful. But then when people talk or they come and watch what you do, they're like, oh my God, but you just kind of get acclimated to it. It's just a lot of airplanes with O'Hare and Midway in such close proximity, and they're 2 core 30 airports, and they're 7, whatever they are, maybe 10 miles apart, O'Hare and Midway. So it's a lot of planes coming and going every hour. Wow.
And of course, the creme de la creme job, which occurs once a year with the exception of 2020, is working AirVenture. And so what was that like?
It was a blast, and it takes all your experience as air traffic, and you kind of throw most of that out the window. It's just such a different way of doing air traffic from when you're on the hill and you're doing the Fisk approach coming up. You have binoculars now on the hill, and that's kind of like the approach control where you're sequencing to the different runways. Either you go right and follow the east-west road, or you follow the tracks up, stay inside the gravel pit. You're just trying to balance the airport. You have a hotline into the tower, so if there's an incident on a runway and a runway closes, well, now your options are different. Or during the mass fly-ins, if the bonanzas come in, I don't know if you've done that or not, but you guys shut down 3-6 left and 3-6 right. When you guys come in, you guys land 3 abreast. So everything has to funnel to the north side of the airport. It's just an interesting way of doing approach control, the binoculars on a hill. In the tower, as you're sequencing guys to land, you may look at the downwind, and you pick the binoculars up, and you might see like 12 planes in the binoculars, and you're trying to sort all that out, and you have people trying to help spot for you. You got to prioritize. There's 3 things being said at once. You're saying while you're making the next game plan, if any of that makes sense. And
I still don't know how they do it. Like, just flying in there, and they're like, the white high wing, go base. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's like 7 of those. Like,
That's right.
I mean, at least with the twin, like, we're lucky because they were like, the twin raccoon. I'm like, oh, that's us. I know that's us.
Yeah, and it happens where you say turn base, you say turn right, follow east-west road, and you see 3 white high wings all down the tracks, all turn right. And you're like, they'll figure it out when they get there, They just keep going because you can't ever stop.
I have to tell you about that. The part that amazes me the most about what the air traffic controllers are able to do at AirVenture are handling all of those mistakes, all of those things. We laugh about it because we record our flights when we go in there, and some of them are almost comical. I mean, it's like, I remember it was probably the last one, the one before, where it was like, red tail dragger, you're my guy, you turn and everybody's gonna follow you, and he tells them to turn, nothing happens. Tells them to turn, nothing happens. Next thing you go, you see like, blue low wing, you're my guy now.
Yeah.
And you wonder what happens like that. He's like, I think that guy's going to Green Bay. So you never know.
Normally, in all other forms of air traffic, usually there's readbacks. But in AirVenture, they're just talking. There's no readback, so he just keeps like a conversation going with himself. He's like, "All right, here's what we're gonna do. That looks good. Yeah, let's try this." It's like it sounds like an auctioneer, It's a really cool form of air traffic.
It would be beneficial if people that haven't been there before got a little deeper into the NOTAMs maybe from time to time. And you see, and normally because the controllers can't and shouldn't, really get in that. But a lot of times you'll hear the pilots are getting frustrated, because people aren't doing the right speeds at the right altitudes, and did you read the note? The pilots are yelling at each other sometimes. But
VFR tower pilots, VFR tower controllers, those are the ones who are like perfect for that job.
Yeah, you're right. It is. It can be very difficult. When it works, and it does work for everyone, and it's amazing how well it does. I have seen times where everybody except for maybe one guy was going the right direction around a hold around the lake, and one guy's going the opposite direction. You never know what's going to happen, but you guys do a great job, and it's amazing that you were able to impressive that you were able to get that role and do it. It must be a real camaraderie to be working with that crew.
Yeah, it's a pretty tight niche for that, at least for that 7 to 10 days, and then everybody goes back to the real world and all their facilities, and you see each other again the following year.
When you get back, is there any adjustment?
A certain mixture of rookie controllers, a certain mixture of what they call limited, which means you've been there between 1 and 3 years before, and then veterans, because it's just so complex. You got to have an influx of new people. You got to weed out the people that you brought in that shouldn't be there next year, so they can learn from others, and so you can keep that pipeline going. So that's kind of how that system works.
Got it. That's fascinating. So you've got the two of you having met out there at O'Hare, already an aviation family at that point, and obviously, as you mentioned, a background of loving Cessna twins. So what brought you together with the plane that you've got?
Well, we started flying, and we were flying. We were renting a Skyhawk and then eventually a Saratoga, and it was a beautiful newer Saratoga. It's a post 2000, AC, all the bells and whistles. Well, I think two big keys to getting the Skyhawk. One, to get the 310, but one, I made Jamie fly down to Georgia and back in the same day in a Cessna Skyhawk for a family reunion.
Yeah.
And that was a long day. So that let her realize that we needed something closer to 170 knots. And
I kind of knew that already, but yeah.
That helped solidify that. And we were renting a Saratoga. It was a beautiful plane. By the time we put all the kids in it and we do the weight and balance, it's not a 6-person airplane, not even close. And especially this particular one with the air conditioning and all the different options that it had, it was just a very heavy airplane. So we basically could go within a 200-mile radius with IFR reserves on gas. So we just started talking, and
we talked about Moonies, but then we decided we really wanted that extra engine, and then we talked about bearings, but you just like within the 310, it's so roomy. You could put so much stuff in there, and It feels like, I don't know. I think it's the roomiest one that we could get. So we ended up
definitely noticeably wider, and we're always crawling around, or she's crawling around. And
well, you got a lot of kids to take care of there.
You put a lot of crap in there. So I've tested it out.
Yeah.
It's a nice.
So it carries the right amount, 163 gallons of gas. We can go nonstop almost anywhere east of the Rockies.
Wow.
Fast enough, 175 to 182 knots. So, we can beat the airliners time-wise most of the time, doorstep to doorstep. So we decided on the twin for overwater, night, IMC, all these different things that we kind of were looking for, and being able to carry all the kids, during those kind of trips. And then once we narrowed it down to the 310, I knew the systems inside and out from flying a 401 in my before life. I always thought those tip tanks were super sexy. And, we started looking and lucked out. We found one close by here in Lansing, Illinois, which is not very far.
Mm-hmm.
And
it had the de-ice boots.
Yeah.
A big plus. It had that radar, which I thought was a big plus. But honestly, I wish we had the long. I think the long nose is sexier than.
Yeah.
whatever.
So we had a hangar, and the long nose has problems
That's
fitting
right.
in
It
the
probably
hangar.
wouldn't fit.
It wouldn't
would
fit.
in our
Yeah.
hangar.
So we were
I didn't think
looking.
about that.
We looked for a Q model. Normally
At
asked.
some point, the aesthetics and maybe a saw would get you a little bit of
Yeah.
an extra doggy door there, and then you'd be able to have that.
Have like a little cutout in the door of the hangar. Fit around the nose.
Hey, I think Delta does it. I've seen people do things like that in major hangars. You could pull it off.
Yeah.
There you go.
I've
Well,
seen that.
it's a beautiful, iconic aircraft, and they're so fast.
Yeah. It does pretty well. You can run them up to 190. I don't usually do that. I got to pay for the engines, and so I leave it set about 175 to 182.
Mhm.
It's burning about 25, 26 gallons per hour, and it gets us everywhere we need to
You can
go.
make it to like South Florida
Yeah.
on one tank.
So it does everything we wanted. It had de-ice, which is a nice escape thing living in the Midwest. It's got the boots, the hot props, the alcohol windshield. It's not fikey, but it's good enough for us. I don't
Have you had
want
to use the boots?
not the boots. I've used the alcohol windshield a couple times through some tops just to clear it off, but I haven't actually had to pop the boots. I try to avoid it at all
Yeah, we try to
costs.
stay out of that nonsense.
Well, we always try to avoid ice, but it's pretty good when you've got it on board and you know that you can use it when you need to.
Yeah, I test it out every couple of months. It all works well. So
Absolutely. How's it been? Has it been okay maintenance-wise for you?
For the most part, yes. Early on, the plane wasn't flown enough in the last couple of years before we acquired it. So we got a good pre-purchase inspection done by a shop. The guy that did it at that shop owned a 310 before, so that felt nice. And the plane came back corrosion-free. It had relatively low times on the engines, probably between 350, 400 hours or so. And they were overhauled at a reputable shop, but it just hadn't flown much in the last several years. So I made an offer keeping that in mind and closed on it, flew it around for a few months. Everything was going pretty good. I had the red dye. They have the threaded prop hubs, so the red dye came out one day. It had been several years, even though the hours were still low. So I had to get the props both overhauled. I've some other thing, I've changed all the struts, changed the tires and brakes. Left fuel divider got overhauled. I think the right engine exhaust stacks got overhauled, and changed out an alternator and some vacuum pumps. I had the dual vacuum pump failure, which we made a video. We were going down to Key West and lost both vacuum pumps, which I didn't even think was possible. So, for the most part, it's all been fairly minor. And then, with the exception of the avionics overhaul and the paint, have probably been the two biggest things.
So let's talk about that for a minute. You've got some pretty impressive avionics on there. The aircraft's got impressive things. Obviously, one of the reasons that you're here, you're partnered with Avidyne. You've got a full Avidyne stack, and with the IFDs, et cetera. One of the things that I noted about your equipment that's really impressive is that you've also got the SkyTrax system for TAS, for active traffic, in addition to just ADS-B traffic. So what went into all those decisions?
So we went down to trying to think. I ended up getting the autopilot first, and then we ended up going to Sun and Fun, and we decided, okay, we've replaced the old factory autopilot with the new S-Tech autopilot. It talks to the Garmin, Avidyne, it's starting to look, but I had the GNS 530s, and I got tired of, the knobs. I'm worried about the longevity of those particular, and some of that stuff is just not very intuitive. So I said, all right, let's go to Sun and Fun. Let's take advantage. Let's look at everything that all the top avionics suppliers have. And we went to everybody. We toyed, we touched, we played. We, got downloaded some of the stuff and played with them on the iPad. But the Avidyne, man, we were just blown away. The IFD to me is so intuitive that just the logic that it puts into it, how you select things, how it builds your flight plan and shows you everything. It has your altitude step downs on the approaches all displayed there, being able to use knobs and push buttons and everything. It was just absolutely blown away with that. So, which I know we're getting to the SkyTrax, but with with that, once I started looking and thinking about the panel layout, you know, at the time I had a ADS-B in and out transponder that provided regular traffic. Well, when we were away from metropolitan areas, or at times, you know, we just did not, we'd see a plane go by that never was displayed.
Right.
So I decided that in conjunction with the dual IFDs, to remote the transponder to get the ADS-B out there, and then trying to figure out the option, well, what do we want to do for ADS-B in and traffic? And as soon as when I was going through the different options with Dale at the Avidyne tent there in Sun and Fun, as soon as we were going through it, he started talking about the Skytrax 605 Alpha, and I started reading about it, and I was just blown away. I'm like, man, this is like airliner TCAS at
Right.
such an affordable price point, and it's going to ping out and find all the planes, you know, for me that maybe necessarily don't have ADS-B. So we just read about it, and then when we came back from Sun and Fun, we put a package together, and we sent it up to our avionics shop, which happened to already be a big Midwest dealer for Avidyne. And we put it all together, we got it installed, and it has been as advertised. At times, I mean, you can tell who has ADS-B or not, whether or not you're getting the call sign or the different symbols. And the amount of planes that are out there that don't have ADS-B, we all think, and maybe most of us talk, and you know, oh, the mandate came out. There's a lot of people that just will not fly near the busy class Bs, and they're just not going to equip with it. And I can still ping them out and see them now, which has just been a huge safety relief. I love it.
Yeah, I'll tell you from experience, I've got active traffic as well. It is amazing how many aircraft ping. And for anyone watching, you know, the difference is you can see ADS-B symbols for those aircraft that are equipped, and you see the traditional diamond-shaped symbols indicating traffic of non-compliant aircraft. And you do want to spot those. I think one of the double-edged swords about all of this is that once you get ADS-B and you have this traffic in front of you, there's a tendency to believe that you're seeing it all. And it runs the risk that having that traffic in front of you, that you do a little less looking outside for traffic, and so I do think having the active makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I do think that people, as they get into congested airspace, or just as they get more reliant on their ADS-B traffic and weather, that it gives you a false sense of security. And there are still a ton of planes. I don't know what the percentage is, but there's still a ton of planes out there flying that are not ADS-B equipped. Wow. So it's nice to actively ping them. And
yeah. So let's talk about your flying a little bit, because obviously the adventures that you fly as a family are what really led to 310 Pilot. And so tell me a little bit about how did that evolve? I mean, you have so many passionate followers, rightly so.
Yeah, and it was all just by mistake. We never sat out and decided we're going to buy an airplane, we're going to grab a GoPro, and then we're going to make a bunch of YouTube videos and get 20 million plus views. Like, that was never even a thought. Bought the 310, started working on the upgrade. We decided early on this is going to be our forever bird. We're going to put all the bells and whistles in it that we want to make us happy, and then we're going to fly it until I lose my medical. Jamie gave me a gift card one day for rosin sun visors. Our old sun visors, every time I took off and landed, they'd fall down a lot. Gave me a gift card, and I was looking for the STC for my particular model of 310, and I didn't see it initially, which I do have them now, and they work great. I didn't see them initially. So I just used that gift card, and I bought a GoPro. And then I was sitting in the hangar one day, and I looked up kind of in between, and I just stuck the camera. I was like, oh, that looks pretty good. I didn't level anything or measure. I just stuck it up there. And it's the same camera that we have today. Well, at least the same sticky. I've upgraded camera a bit, but it's the same mount. And we took off, and it was just a terrible flight. And I was so bad at editing. I wasn't a big social media person, so I didn't have Facebook or any of the other stuff. And I was terrible at editing. I used iMovie's, you know, free software, and I made like a 50-minute video of us trying to go downtown Chicago and grab dinner and come home, and none of it happened. the snowstorms came in, and so we peeled out of there, and then we were going to go to Schaumburg and land, and I ended up getting a pop-up IFR and landed back at the airport. So it was a flight to nowhere, and we published it, and Jamie was talking on the radio, and I think like for whatever reason, it just got a bunch of views and people liked it. And so as time went on, we were just like, man, this is kind of neat. We're showing off general aviation. I know that's a hot topic about whether or not GA is dying or not, or declining, I guess would be a better word, or not. Either way, promoting general aviation was a great thing. Just showing off our passion and our travels, it just became fun. It was well received. People seemed to like it. So we just kept going, and I got better at editing, got much shorter and concise, so I didn't have 55 minutes of flying nowhere. And we started showing off some of the neat destinations that other GA pilots can go to, and it seemed to resonate well with people. I'm able to use Jamie to relieve the workload because she's a controller, and she gets the whole system even though she has no desire to be a pilot. So it just seemed to work well with people. A lot of positive comments. I love when people are constantly reaching out to us to tell us, hey, I didn't really have any interest in aviation. I started following you, and then I realized, well, I could do this too. And then they come back and they tell me when they solo or when they get their private, or people that want to buy airplanes, and I help talk to them or whatever. It's just been so, just in a selfish way, kind of rewarding to see other people come back and just get involved in aviation in some way. So it's been great. That's kind of how 310 Pilot started. It's just all for fun, and here we are. We're just making videos, try to put them out once a week and show our travels.
That's the best way to do it, right? I mean, manufacturing something to try to accomplish the goal of what you've done isn't necessarily as sincere. And the reality is that, think about that first flight that you just talked about. That's exactly what people want to learn from and see. It's not the flight that goes exactly as planned. It's the flight that doesn't. And how do you cope with that? And what's involved? So hats off to you for doing that.
Sure, thank you.
So what's your favorite destination that you've done and that you've documented?
I have to say the Bahamas. It was just so amazing. This was before my autopilot too, so this was all hand flown from Chicago area all down to the Bahamas, island hopping. I hadn't flown out of the country in a long time, so I had to learn the EAPIS process and some of the different ins and outs of the country. And I got the AOPA Bahamas book or whatever they make, that you look, and I just started reading, and I learned as much as I could, watched a few YouTube videos, and we just sought out. And just how, I don't know, how pro general aviation the Bahamas are and how reliant they are on U.S. tourism. It was so easy, it was so simple, and it was very beautiful. When I come into the east side of Andros Island, and for those of you that don't know Andros, because nobody usually goes there. It's the largest island in the Bahamas land-wise, and it's the most unpopulated. But if you Google Earth map it and you look at it, it's just amazing colors. And when we flew into that, it was like flying into a painting. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
And we got to stay at some really cool spots. Each island has a different flavor to it. So we were just hopping around these small islands, Spanish Wells, north of Eleuthera, Congo Town, and Treasure Key was the last place, which unfortunately I think Treasure got leveled during the last hurricane. But I would love to go to every Bahamas island that we can land on. That's like a goal of mine. There's a lot of them, but the Caribbean for me was the most fun.
Yeah, Spanish Wells was like a little fishing village, and then Andros was it was the jungle. And then the Treasure Key was a little bit more like populated, little like party area.
Yeah. Is that your favorite flight that we've taken? Favorite trip?
Jeez. I think so. I mean, the West Coast swing that we did was like similar to that, and that was fun too. We just never, like, I always feel like I would, want more time. We lost a day when we went to the Bahamas because we couldn't leave out of Fort Pierce that one night. But
yeah,
no, we've taken a lot of fun trips. I love the lake in Virginia that we did, which hasn't come out yet.
We got a few flights to come out.
Yeah.
I can only edit so fast. But we just did Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia. We stayed at a bed and breakfast in Western Virginia. It was a really fun place.
Yeah, that was cool.
Got to meet a real live astronaut.
Yes.
Just came back from the space station. Just aviation is such a small community. We're at a bed and breakfast in Virginia, and this guy named Reed Wiseman, who you can look him up. He's an astronaut. Just came back from the International Space Station. We're sitting there having a drink, playing dominoes with an astronaut. Aviation is such a cool community.
Yeah.
The other thing that's so wonderful, I think, about general aviation is that it doesn't matter like whether someone like yourself that's known by millions of people or someone else that just got their license. There's doesn't seem to be much ego involved and much stigma. Everyone has this in common, and we all want to share it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been great. We've made so many connections with people that are just a great down to earth. Everybody wants to help each other. If I ever needed to go drop my plane off to go get something done, I know people I can call, and the same people will call me if they ever need something to go. And it's pretty selfless. People in general aviation are gonna help each other out quite a bit.
I didn't know when we got into this that GA was kind of like on the downhill slope. But we've heard from so many people like, you inspired me to get my license, or I want to do this, and like people in Europe are like, this stuff is not happening over here, like it's dead over here. And so it's awesome to see that we kind of like try to keep it alive, because I think a lot of people now are like they can get sort of the same joy on their virtual video games and stuff, and it's like, no, we got to keep this going. Like, I don't want any of these little airports to close down. Like, I don't want people to put it out there and show like how cool it can be. I think it's just something people didn't really realize.
Oh, I totally agree. And we've certainly worked so hard during this time, during the pandemic, to try to get people within safe guidelines to continue flying, continue supporting airport restaurants and local FBOs and pilot shops, because it's such a fragile community, and a lot of companies are here because they're passionate about it, not because they couldn't take their technology to some other market and make a lot more money. They're here because they love flying.
Yeah, he's told me there's airports that we've been to. He's like, yeah, I flew in here when I was 19 and it was just hopping. There were just airplanes everywhere, everybody doing all this stuff, and now it's like a ghost town. I'm like, that's so sad to me. I'm not even a pilot, and that just makes me sad.
So we definitely.
But I have seen you take the controls. So no interest in getting any further along with that.
No, I really feel like in order to do that, you got to really have like the bug. You got to have the bug, you got to have the passion. It takes a lot of time and money, and people say like, oh, well, you got the plane and he's an instructor. So, but I don't think that you should learn to fly in a 310, and I also don't think you're best instructor. So,
there's a rite of passage if you can learn to fly in the 310. I'm going to say that right now, Jamie, to have your first certificate and your check ride be multi-engine, high performance, complex. Yeah. Good for you if you pull that one off.
He comes in high and fast. You'll see what I do. No, I just don't. I would rather just like help navigate and talk on the radio and climb in the back and take a nap or make a cocktail or whatever. Like I just like want to go on vacation.
I like that. And how's it been? Obviously you've got 4 kids. What's it like raising your family in the aircraft, basically, while taking all these trips?
They all seem to love it. Like my Carson, he's working on his pilot's license. Obviously the two younger ones think it's so cool. They're like, like always like looking out the window. They've gotten a little bit used to it now, so they seem like whatever. Janae low-key loves it. Like she doesn't want to be on YouTube, so she's not in a lot of videos and stuff. But they dig it. Whenever we tell them like that we're planning a trip and we're gonna go do this, and you're all hopping in the airplane, they're like, "Cool, let's go." Let's go.
I remember once with both Jake and Ben also grew up doing it from 3 months old, flying in the plane. And I remember there was a time, for some reason, one or another, we had to drive somewhere that was going to be 3, 4, 5 hours. And they looked at me with this look on their face, and they literally asked, in all honesty, like, "Can a car do that?" Like,
That's
Like
funny.
it's hard to go that far. So kudos to you for being able to do that and raise your kids in a way that they think that that's just the way the world works, because they'll be the ones that spread it from here on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a 6-hour max like road trip threshold, so this is good. This is good for us.
I have a 3-hour max.
Shut up.
If it's more than 3 hours, I'm flying.
I like that. Excellent. And you don't have to worry about traffic in quite the same way, at least.
No, it's
Yeah.
therapeutic. You get up there, you don't have to deal with TSA or parking at a major airport. You can just go and be
Yeah.
free. It's one of the last like true free things that you really have. You can just take off and go anywhere.
They really have
Pretty
taken all the fun out of commercial air travel. You go to the airport, like, you know, you go to O'Hare and everybody is just on like level 9 of their stress level. It's like, oh God. That's not fun anymore. I know it used to be fun. People used to like it. It's just not like that anymore.
I think that was before all of us were born. I think that's what you're referring to. I've seen it in a movie. I've never actually experienced it.
I remember being able to just walk to the gate. Like, I didn't have a ticket, or I was just going to pick up somebody, and you could just walk through and you go to the gate and it was all fine. But
She is from Alaska.
I am, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just like, I remember doing that as like an 18-year-old. And I mean, that was 20 years ago. So things were different. It was all, 9/11 it was the turning point.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Commercial.
speaking of challenging times, so how has your family and your flying been coping with the crisis, the pandemic?
So the early part of it was mitigated by the fact that our plane was in Florida getting painted. So that did delay the airplane getting painted. It was down in Separate Hills at Hawk, and they ran into some delays. The silver, I think it was one of the colors. I think it was the silver. Anyway, they ran into some delays from the suppliers. Suppliers shut down. They didn't have everything they needed to get it done. So it did delay some things.
Well, they did your annual and everything.
Yeah, they knocked the annual out
Yeah.
while they had it. So, I mean, we made best use of it so that I didn't have to, otherwise I was going to have to fly it back and have somebody take apart like a freshly painted airplane, which would have been just terrifying. But
Yeah, I know.
But it got to a point where like people, like viewers of the channel, would just like show up at that airport, like at that dude's shop, and be like, "Where's 1 Bravo Charlie?"
That's the best advocates that you can have. All you have to do is make a video and go, so if anyone wants to stop by and help get our plane out of the shop, feel free.
Yeah.
he was like, man, this is getting kind of crazy around here. I'm like, well, get it back. You know?
Yeah.
But so then I ended up, we didn't start flying until, was that April?
Well, people were like, because we had this extra time off because we had reduced staffing at work because of COVID-19. So like, oh, you got your plane back, so that means, and you have all this time off, you can do all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, except there's nowhere to go and nothing to do.
Where are we going to stay?
Everything was closed. Yeah, there was no, yeah. So it was weird for a little bit.
Yeah, we got it back from Florida, and then we did just some local flying around. I used that time to do a little aerial photo shoot over downtown Chicago. And then, so finally we started getting some offers. So some lake houses, private homes and lake houses, stuff like that. So that's kind of what we used to travel as things started opening back up. But you're constantly checking state by state because all these states are different. And some states, depending on what state you came from, has different rules for you. So it's been a challenge to try to get our wings back, but we were able to finally manage it, and we've since COVID has started, and keeping in mind the first half the airplane was down, we've flown to Georgia twice, Virginia. We went up to Mackinac Island and stayed, which is a great, beautiful aviation spot.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wisconsin.
Wisconsin to
the
a
lake
lake
house there.
And then out to the farm a few
lot.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've definitely canceled a couple of trips too that we wanted to do. So it's it's just a challenge of figuring out where we can go. Hopeful that things are trending up and they do not reverse course.
Yeah.
With restrictions.
So what's next for you guys? Obviously, you've got a lot of folks out there. Anyone interested? 310 Pilot on YouTube. What's kind of in the film can, or what's coming up next? What are you looking forward to?
As far as the airplane's concerned, I would like to get rid of my old engine instrument gauges, because that's one part of it, is this whole modernization of this 1973 twin that we've been doing. And that's kind of the last big hurdle for us. So I'm kind of looking forward to see what comes out that can kind of replace that, maybe combine up some of my gauges, get the oil and fuel out of the airplane. But other than that, it's really the only upgrade I have left for that. As far as traveling, high on our list is a West Coast swing. I've been flying for 20 years. I've never flown west of the Rockies. So we'd like to do the Grand Canyon, maybe hit Vegas, Grand Canyon.
We want to do like the Redwoods and Napa. And then on the way back, like we want to do like a big U-turn on the way back to like Yellowstone and
Mount Rushmore. You know, just kind of go south around Albuquerque and then come back the Northern Pass over the Dakotas.
But for we have some time off in August, which was slotted for I was going to make him go to Europe on an airliner, but that's we're not allowed in Europe right now, so I guess we're not doing that. So we're either going to try to squeeze in the West Coast swing, or we also want to do like a New England swing and like see all the lighthouses, like Maine, like probably start out in Nantucket and head up towards Maine and do that. I think that might be what
hit Niagara.
Well, I'll tell you what, we are all based right up here outside Boston. You decide to come up anywhere near New England, you have someone to take and show you around the entire area. We'd love to do some joint stuff with you.
Yeah, we'll definitely hit you up.
Yeah, New England is absolutely perfect for general aviation, with islands and the tip of the Cape and all the things that are very difficult by car to get to, including the mountains and all around, but by plane. Boy, it's all close, and love to join up with you guys and show you that.
Yeah, I thought mid-August would be great for that.
Yeah, is that usually good weather-wise up there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We'll have to hit it up.
Yeah.
We'll chat offline about that. But thank you both so much for joining us here on this special edition of SocialFlight Live. It's really wonderful. You're doing great things for general aviation, and it's so fun to watch what you and your family are doing flying around. I mean, for anyone watching 310 Pilot on YouTube, thank you both Kevin and Jamie, and of course to your kids for giving you the time to do this show as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeff. It's been great.
Thanks.
Absolutely. And to everybody, to everyone out there, we will be back again following this in a couple of weeks with regular SocialFlight Live programs. Be sure to check out socialflight.com for tens of thousands of aviation events and destinations, all the cool places to fly that hopefully will also be visited soon by Kevin and Jamie at 310 Pilot. And thanks especially to Avidyne for making all of this possible. Until next time, I'm Jeff Simon for SocialFlight. Blue skies.